Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm so glad you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest, Landon Bryant. Landon has quickly grown in social media fame through Landon Talks as he discusses a wide array of topics that delve into Southern history, culture, and traditions. He has achieved millions of likes and shares through his unique storytelling. He grew up in and still resides in Laurel, Mississippi. Welcome, Landon.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm so excited you're here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your family, and what inspired you to start Landon Talks.
Well, I live in Laurel, Mississippi, and I've lived here most of my life. I left for college and came back, and I'm actually live in a house that I grew up in at one point. Part of the time I was in high school, I lived in this very house, and I was not going to come back to the street. But here we are, and it's the best place to be. There's really something about like growing up in and around family. Like I can just send my kid outside, and he's going to go to somebody's house that he knows, and that's how I grew up, and it's a really special way of living. I didn't know it was a special way of living until I started talking on the internet like this, but now I know what it is, and I really appreciate it. And now I just talk too much on the internet is basically it.
I'm sure you've had lots of people tell you how special and unique it is, especially if they're away from family or in a big city where they can't have that same small town life. And it is such a blessing.
It definitely is. And talking about it like that, and hearing from people does make me know how special it is. And I love to hear people's stories like that.
One of the unique things on your posts, I mostly see your posts on Instagram. I know you have Facebook and YouTube and other things like that, but on Instagram, when I see your posts, I see lots and lots of comments. And what's unique about them is whenever people are commenting, they're often commenting not just on what you said about the Southernism, whatever Southernism you picked for your post, but they're saying, well, but this is how we do it in our town, or this is how I do it in my family, or this is what I grew up with. And it's like this kind of unique history and look into different places in the South. And even though I grew up in the South my entire life, sometimes I read those comments, I'm like, what? I'd never even heard of that before.
Yes. Yes, I feel the same way every day. I feel the same way. I'm so surprised by things that are Southern specifically. Like sometimes I don't realize stuff that we do is specific to us, and then things that are regional, like to different places and what people say and are like, no, that I live in the South and I've never heard of that. It surprises me. And I love that. I love that we have such unique cultures everywhere. I mean, I knew like Louisiana was different than everybody else, but it turns out we all are. We all got our own unique thing. And I love to like learn about it. I love to see what people have to say about it. It's my favorite thing, and now I get to do it as my job. So it's really such a blessing. The comments are the best part of what I'm doing. If anybody takes anything away from this whole thing, is go to my page, sure, but the comment section is where you need to go to. It's a gold mine of culture and hilariousness and kindness. People are being kind.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. What themes or topics do you discuss, and how do you decide on each of your posts which subject you're going to pick?
So I wish I could be like, I have a very specific process and I have it planned out for months in advance and it's just so official. But I'm a chatterbox. I just talk too much. And it's kind of like if I can get to talking on a subject that I'm interested in, I can talk about it for a little while. So I've taken that approach. I feel like there has to be a genuine and authentic aspect to social media for it to work. And so for me, the way I can make it as genuine as I can is I just sit down and think about what I would like to talk about that day. But I have a running list on my phone, a long list of of like all the topics that you have in the South that even like I just go outside and I hear somebody say something and I write it down and add it to that list. So I just go to that list every day and scroll through it and pick whatever speaks to me that day about what I think I could say the most about, and sometimes I won't have anything to say about, I don't know, like fried chicken. And then the next day I will have a ton to say about it. So I just kind of, I love to say, however the spirit leads you, that's kind of like what happens with it. However it's feels that day, whatever feels right that day, which can be frustrating for my manager when she needs me to talk about specific topics for brands and stuff. I'm like, I don't have anything to say about that today. So I know that frustrates.
Right. I don't feel like talking about
I
fried
don't want to
chicken.
talk about it today, like that kind of a thing. But I just sit down in front of the mic and I talk. And it can be anywhere from like to 2 minutes to 5 minutes, or more than that. And I just kind of edit that down to a minute and a half for reels, take away all the ums and the pauses, and then keep the main idea in the minute and a half, which is actually like such an English lesson, like a language arts lesson. I think about it all the time because I used to be a teacher, like keeping the main idea after it being 5 minutes down to a minute and a half is a challenge. It's like a literature challenge of some sort. So that is, I play ELA every day, and see what happens. I wish I knew what was going to happen every day, but I really never know. And I just enjoy seeing what people also have to say about it. So I think as long as I can keep the topics relevant, and I try to steer away from like things I know will bring people out saying intense things. Like I do try to like curate the topics to be topics that everyone will be kind about. So it's well thought about, but it's also a little bit more in the moment than planned out. So I don't know what I'm doing. Basically, is the result of all that.
Well, it's really fun to talk about something you're excited about, and that
Definitely.
makes it even better when you post. So I can very much understand why you do that. People like this account for different reasons. Some are just reminiscing because they're from the South, and others are just fascinated because they're learning about our weird Southernisms for the first time. They're
Yes,
like,
they are.
what are they? What is that real? So your account is very funny, but it's also a real discussion, and it just is really fun for people to learn about each other across the nation. There's so much diversity, and like we mentioned, even in different states or
Counties
even
is.
in different,
Hmm.
neighborhoods, just down the
Exactly.
road, it could be different than where you grew up. Another thing you do is showdowns where people vote on their favorite item in a category. And what's funny is I've tried to vote and I almost never can because I can't decide.
It's hard, isn't it? It's so crazy. I love those so much. So my family, they're all sports people. Like if I had followed the like path that I feel like they probably intended, I would have played baseball at Ole Miss and been like that kind of they're all like baseball coaches. They like love that. They love sports. And I just have never connected with that. I'll go to a tailgate. I love to tailgate ahead of time, but never really connected with the sports aspect of it. But I love hearing them talk on Sundays. And we used to play this game about like how long is it going to take them to mention baseball, and I think 3 minutes was the record, like the longest it ever took. So I've always listened to their conversations about tournaments and championships and all the things and rankings, and this is kind of my way of connecting with that side of my family. And what side of the audience is the competitive element of it, but it's competitive about butter beans and stuff, and it's hilarious. It also, the choices are really really hard, and I have to take it so seriously because people get so worked up about get so worked up about it. Even for the next one that I'm doing, I've got somebody that's going to come in that like does bracketing to make sure that it's like a fair. I mean, I do my best to make it a fair bracket, but to make sure it's a fair bracket and it's like all done, I'm like, pretty soon we're gonna have like full on bets being taken on this. We're gonna have to like really watch ourselves, but it's so fun. I think that's so fun, and having to choose between like green beans and potato salad is just cutthroat, ruthless.
Yes, and they want to know it's all fair play. Like you said, they have to know this is being done in a real and serious fashion because they are really all in on their butter beans.
They really are, and there's sometimes when I don't agree with the results, and I still have to like do the thing because I'm like, somebody there, this is serious enough that somebody's gonna hack my account and like check these results, like I'm just so I'm just being honest every time because I
Somebody
think, who
in the
knows.
FBI is going
They're
to
all
check
so
this out.
serious. Yeah, it's how it feels in the comments if you go look at them. But they're so much fun. It's fun to get people involved. It's the community aspect of this is the best part, and that's when they all get to acting up in the best way.
So, what are some of your favorite Southernisms? You've done this for months now. How long have you been doing this? You may have said already.
I started doing this in March of 2023, so last year. So a little, like about a year and a half now, a little over a year. And I just love all of them. I think my favorite one would have to be, and it didn't really even get that many views. I don't know how many views it got. I mean, a lot of views, but that some of them get millions of views and some of them don't. But my grandmother walked in my house one day and I said, well, how are you doing, Grandma? And she said, well, I'd have to feel better to die. And I was like, hold on. That is so good. I've got to write that down. And I love that.
That one
That's
you
one
have
of
to
my
write down
favorite.
immediately.
Yes. I was like, wait, don't say anything else. I've got to write that down. That's so good. It's all of it. It's just the whole culture is hilarious. And now that I've turned this eye towards it, I've started noticing more and more the uniqueness of things that we say. And I think it's just wonderful.
Well, it's funny when you grow up with things and you're so used to it, you don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that other people don't understand what you're saying or don't understand the meaning behind it. We recently moved from the South up north, and my husband was loading chairs into the back of a truck. He had a giant truck full of chairs, drove to the next place, and we got there to unload them. A guy was walking by and said, do you need some help? And what's funny is my husband, there's a dance that happens in the South when someone offers to help. In the South, you respond, "Oh, no, I don't want to be a bother." And the other person knows to respond, "Oh, it's no bother at all." And after some backs and forths, "Are you sure?" "Well, okay, as long as I'm not putting you out." Eventually, both guys unload the truck. Well, my husband just like, "Oh, I know, I don't want to bother you." And the guy's like, "Okay."
Right.
And he walked off. And
Your husband's like gasping. That's hilarious.
And he realized, he's
That's
like, well,
hilarious.
in reality, I said, no, I don't want to be a bother.
But
So the
that's
guy's like,
not what you
okay.
meant. I can't imagine. My
You have to
condolences to your
actually state
husbands.
what you mean up here.
That's wild. I don't know anything about that. We've got to dance around it at least a few times before we get
Oh,
into
yeah.
it. We really do. That's been happening a lot to me lately. Now I'm working with people outside of the South, and I've written a book for Hachette, and it was so fun and it was wild. But when we got to editing the book, none of the editors were from the South, and I turned in this manuscript that was like 52,000 words, and like they turned that thing red. Like it was just like solid red with like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. What does this mean? So we ended up having to put footnotes and cross references in the book. So there's like 2 or 3 footnotes at the bottom
To
of every
explain
page
things.
explaining like what I meant by that. And it's the craziest stuff that I had no idea. So it's been enlightening. I think it's going to be hilarious for Southerners when that book comes out next year to see all the stuff that had to be explained. Like, whoa, people really don't know what we're talking about. It's a totally different language. So condolences to your husband. I know I've dabbled in that field a little bit, and it surprises me as well every time.
Well, it's funny that your book is going to be about Southernisms, but also sort of dictionary.
It's a field guide to all things Southern. So if you're from the South, you're going to love
Oh,
reading all the things. If you're not from the South, you're going to be well educated about it by the end of the book.
and that's the title, A Field Guide to All Things Southern?
Bless your heart, a field guide to all things Southern.
Oh, you got to have a bless your heart in there.
You got to throw the bless your heart in there. Actually, it was funny when we were making the cover of the book. I've got all this long hair, and there's some images of a very famous religion of Jesus, Jesus that look like this sometimes with hair. So with bless your heart huge across the front of the book, and then my face underneath it, they were like, this looks like a religious text. We've got to figure out a different way. So they had to make me a cartoon instead of my real face.
Instead of your
I think
real
it was,
face and hair.
I thought that was
That's
funny.
pretty good.
But because you got to have a bless your heart. We had to keep the bless your heart.
Yes, you have to keep the bless your heart. I mean, the South is very hospitable. They are known for their hospitality, but they struggle at times, just like everyone else, with some of their things. And one of your posts that I really got a chuckle out of was the bless your heart or bless her heart. You're not going to slander or gossip, but as soon as you say, well, bless her heart, then you can follow it with some gossip. Apparently in the
It's
South.
been laid on my heart. All this, the whole thing.
Bless her heart. Have you heard that she is having some trouble with her kids?
And I just have been thinking
We
about
should
them.
add her to the prayer list.
Exactly. I'd rather walk on my lips than talk about anybody, but that whole thing.
Well, another funny story from our Southern upbringing, my husband recently was talking about when he was a kid, his mom would see his, like a neighbor cousin driving up the drive in their pickup truck, and she would be really exasperated because they're dropping by and she didn't have time, but they'd come and sit a spell and visit, and as they're leaving, she would say something like, "Well, there ain't no need in running off." And then, they try to convince him to stay. And then when they finally left, they'd walk out and stand in the drive and talk a little while longer. And
Yes.
it's like, but Mom, when they were driving up the driveway, you were so exasperated because they were coming in. But then it
And
just turns into this
now
big
we can't get them
hospitable
out of
moment.
here. Standing by the window of the door, like of the car door, the whole thing is there's stages to getting out of a Southern household. It really
Yes,
is.
if you come to a Southerner's house, you might start exiting a few minutes before you really need to exit because it may take a while.
Yeah.
They may not, and then they
Don't
maybe
get your hopes up just
don't get
yet.
your hopes up. You're going to go home with some food. If there's plenty of food, you're going to go home with some food.
Yes,
They're going to try to make you eat 2 or 3
definitely.
helpings at least until you're bursting at the seams.
Definitely.
Might need to be wheeled out.
Definitely. But you will have something to eat and you will feel loved at the end of it.
You definitely will feel loved. You will have lots of food. You'll be full and you will feel very loved. Another funny word that I had growing up was fixin' to. And I did not
Mhm.
realize that
That's
that's
what
not.
started this whole thing was fixing to.
Did it?
Mhm.
Tell me about it.
Yes. When I started all this, I was just talking on the internet. I was telling stories, and I told a story of Walmart High School, and we can get into that if you want to, but I went to Walmart High School. And when I
Walmart High
a real
School?
Walmart for high school.
Was it in a Walmart?
So, well, let's just go into it and we'll come back to that. It really was. So there's tornadoes in the South. Obviously, we like to live with tornadoes. And on our Friday of spring break, my 8th grade year, a tornado blew away our school, like blew it away, but nobody was there. So nobody was hurt. But it smashed it. So we had to go to school for the last 9 weeks of school. And we had just got a new super Walmart. So they put us in the Walmart, the old Walmart, like a regular Walmart, the building, and all the signs were still there. All they did was take out the shelves. Like that was it. But everything was there, like the baby signs. The 8th grade was in the baby section, and we were really upset about that. Like it was very upsetting. Our
I would be very put out in 8th grade if I was in the baby section.
we were like, so the wrong age. Any other grade could have handled it. We just didn't handle it. But like our principals wore Walmart vests. I had show choir and layaway. The cafeteria was the garden center. It was ridiculous. So I told those stories, and when I was talking about that over the course of a few videos, I said fixin' to, and I got such a response. People were like, "What are you talking about fixing to?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about fixing to?" Like I couldn't. It like broke my brain for a second. I was like, "I don't know how y'all express fixing to without saying fixing to." So that was the first discussion that I had. I was like, "Let's discuss fixing to," and that took off. And then the let's discuss like kind of concept came from there. So fixing to did it. It did it to me too. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe y'all didn't say fixing to. That really blew my mind. Fixing to is such a part of our language. I'm fixing to fix supper. I'm fixing to go over there. I'm fixing to get ready. It's like just regular language. It's the most regular language. That was the first one that like clicked. Wait, like I was like, wait, we say different things. And then from there, it's turned into a whole exploration of that. So fixing to, very important to me.
Oh, that's fun to know that that's your origin. I mean, honestly, like you, the way I realized it was something that not everyone said is I had an aunt in California, and this was, probably 30 years ago, before the internet, and people heard what other people said and watched their crazy sayings online, and so she, as a child, I said, something like, I'm fixing to go swimming, I'm fixing to go put on my swimsuit and go to the pool or whatever. And she had me say it over and over, and she just laughed and just could not get over me saying fixing to, but I couldn't understand what else you were supposed to say.
Like,
Like, Well,
What
what
else?
else do you put in the place of fixing to?
I
I'm
know.
going to go
It took me
change.
so long to get to about to. I know, like, no, that's so crazy. That's so intense. It's the craziest thing. I know. I agree. It's shocking. The world is missing out on fixing to. So I'm sharing it with them. Maybe they'll pick up on it. But fixing to is very good.
The world needs to adopt fixin' to. It is such an easy and quick way to say it. And honestly, it was funny. I recently did a quick search to see if this phrase has become accepted in our English language. And the first thing that popped up was something from like a Yale grammatical diversity project. Which I'm pretty sure was just an explanation of how to interpret the crazy things that we say in the South and
Hilarious.
not an actual admission that this was an accurate word to use when we want to go express
Hilarious.
ourselves.
Well, language evolves, y'all, and it is, and this has been here, but y'all should use it too. That, and I think might could is very good that we use. I didn't know people didn't do might could,
Not
and
could.
I think it is specific because I think it is like I could do something, I could do it. That means I have the option to. But if I might could, I
Mhm.
have the option to, and I might do it. Like so, it's a little more specific than just could, and it feels good to come out too. It's just a good mouth feel as
Mhm.
well. So y'all pick some of these phrases up. They're great.
Okay, so we have fixin' to, might, could, and definitely everyone needs to accept the greatest contraction that's out there, y'all.
It makes the most sense.
Yes, it makes the most sense. It's so much better than
Hmm.
saying you all. Y'all is the best contraction, and I feel like everyone should adopt this.
They really should. I tried for a second, like in early college. I was like, I'm going to say you guys because I had some I lived with some people from Missouri which is still sort of Southern kind of, honestly. But they said you guys, and I was like, I'm going to not. They would make fun of me for saying y'all and for saying McDonald's. They were like, it's McDonald's and you guys. And I tried for like 2 days to say you guys, and I was like, I can't. It feels wrong. Like it feels like a wrong thing to do.
I can't say you guys.
No, I can't do it.
Being from the South, I feel like I'm talking to men if I'm saying you guys. It's not a comprehensive thing to me. It's
Right.
more of a
Right.
very
It's
specific, like if I had my youngest son here with some friends, do you guys want any food? Do you guys want some lunch? It's not a comprehensive.
right.
I would either say that or y'all, but most likely y'all.
Yeah, y'all is just the best way. It's the best way. It's the most inclusive, and it just makes the most sense, and it feels the best. Also coming out.
Definitely. And if you have opinions on all of this, okay, I mentioned your account on Instagram is Landon Talks. Tell us where else to find things.
Yeah, so that's where the biggest conversation is on Instagram. Probably it's on TikTok as well. There's a lot of people over there. There's Threads, there's Facebook, and then on YouTube, I'm Landon Talks a lot because I was gonna I do longer videos there. Just kind of I do a little less editing down on there, and I felt so clever about the Landon Talks a lot situation. The brand people were like, it needs to be one brand. Don't mess with it, but I did, and I like it still. So just Landon Talks, but then Landon Talks a lot on YouTube and come join the conversation. It's a really good time. People are very nice in the comments. Somehow I've got the best people in there just being so kind and curious.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you do talk a lot about Southern hospitality. What does that mean to you? How would you define it? And how does Southern hospitality influence your interactions with others?
So I have a degree in history from the University of Southern Mississippi, and that kind of before I knew I'd be doing this, I focused on the South and Southern culture, and so I learned about reasons why we do those kinds of things. And I think it's actually like really beautiful where a lot of at least my family's Southern culture comes from. Like I'm for at least like 6 generations deep in this of just like people that were working, working people, and it's just small communities that were kind of poor. And I think that when you live in places like that, especially when the world used to be so much smaller, even when I was young, the world was just so small because the internet hadn't opened us up to everybody. You had to look out for your neighbors and things like that. And part of that was protecting their pride as well as them physically. So that's kind of where like if you come to one of my family members' houses or like just pretty much in the South's house, you're going to be offered food and kind of you don't really have a choice in the matter. I mean, like if you have like a disorders or you've got a problem, people are going to respect that. That people will respect it. But like if there's nothing wrong with you and you don't have like an ethical problem with the food, like you're vegetarian or something, then you're going to eat the food. Like, they're not going to let you not eat the food. And that seems pushy to some other people, and it might even be offensive to some cultures. But what that is whoever's house you're coming into, that's them saying, I want to make sure that you're okay, but I'm not going to let you turn this down, because you could be turning it down because you want to hold your pride and say that you don't need that. Like, you don't need that. You're taken care of. But you might not be. You might just be saying that because you're proud. So it's like this whole dance of us going around, and it ends up with us basically being like, I'm going to feed you because I don't personally know if you ate or not. So I'm going to make sure that you're fed no matter what, because I want you to preserve your pride, and you don't have to tell me that you need the help. Like, you don't have to come to anybody's house here on my street and ask for help. You would just be helped with regardless, like, we're going to make sure that you're at least fed and taken care of. And then you can go home with your pride intact, and nobody's going to think anything different. I mean, and I think that's kind of like the base of all of our hospitality here comes from that kind of a thing. Now, there's different levels of Southern people, obviously, and there's levels of wealth that I'm sure that doesn't extend into all areas. But as far as where I'm from and the people that I know and I live with, that's kind of how anybody's household that I went into in this town or in the county around surrounded, no matter who they are, that would be how it would be received, is we're going to take care of you by not allowing you the choice. You just will eat this. So that way you don't have to feel bad. We know that you're taken care of, and everybody in the community is safe.
Well, and as you mentioned, a huge part of that is food. It's a way that people show love. It's a way that they feel like they're caring for you, and they know that that is ministering to you.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, they know you're not hungry, you're full, you're happy. Hopefully you're happy. You
Right.
have been taken care of in that way. And it's a way that you can do it fairly easily. Sometimes it's an entire meal. A lot of times, if you just show up, it's at least a glass of iced tea or lemonade or cold water. I mean, it can be very simple, but it is something.
Right, exactly. And it's like that's something that most people can do. Like, I can make sweet tea even if I don't have much going on. Like, I might not can buy you a new roof, but I can at least make sure your belly's full. So I think that's where a lot of it came from. And now things are different economically, but that kind of attitude still sticks. And I'm glad. I like that. I like knowing everybody's taken care of. I also love to do it in my own home. I don't even mean to. And the first thing when people come, I want to make sure that they've got everything they need. Let me get you some coffee. Let me get you some tea. And I love that kind of hospitality. That's the kind of thing I love the most about where we're from.
Well, Southerners are known for being very welcoming. And you just mentioned when you have people to your home, some of the things you do, offering coffee or tea or something to drink. Are there any other tips that you would offer to be welcoming like a Southerner?
Well, and that's what I love about this whole conversation, is that it opens it up, because it used to be very specific rules, right? Like, we had very specific rules for hospitality, very specific rules for etiquette. But now today, I kind of just think if you're having someone in your home, just make them feel loved, make them feel welcome, and whatever that means to you, whether that's like making sure they have a good spot to sit on the couch, or whether it is getting a glass of sweet tea or a coffee, whatever you've got. We don't have to have a bunch of money or a bunch of things or a bunch of nice things. Just make people feel comfortable, whatever that means to you. Like, I see some people like stocking their guest bathroom so perfectly on the internet with stuff like that. That's them showing love in a way. So whatever that is to you, I think that's what you do. I don't think it has to be specific anymore. There used to be like rules, everybody would be like, put the fork here and the napkin here and make sure this is that. But now it's kind of just like, make people feel loved in your home. That's the only goal.
Mm-hmm. A huge part of hospitality is thinking about the other person versus yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be inward focused, thinking, how does this make me look? Do they think that my cooking is great? Do they think my house is nice? Stop thinking about yourself and just give to the other person. And that's what will show that you care.
Exactly. I think it's just an easy way to feel good about the people that are around you and make them feel good.
Before we move forward, a big thank you to the sponsors for supporting today's episode. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. Today's culture shifts like sand, but New St. Andrews College is established on Christ, the immovable rock. The college is a premier institution that forges evangelical leaders who don't fear or hate the world. Guided by God's Word, equipped with the genius of classical liberal arts and God-honoring wisdom, with a faculty dedicated to academic rigor and to God's kingdom, New St. Andrews College offers an education that frees people. To find out more, visit nsa.edu. Well, speaking of food, Southern cuisine is known for its rich flavors and cultural influences. A lot of people know about Southern food. You know, we talk about fried okra or collard greens, or there's just various things that you would say are Southern foods. What are some of your favorite Southern dishes or food traditions?
Oh, that's so hard because I love all of it. I mean, I just love it. There's not much better than like, a grandma's plate at Sunday lunch where everybody came together. But I mean, I love the classics. I love greens and I love fried chicken. I love gravy and I love mashed potatoes and corn. There's not much better though than like having picked the corn that day and like processed it with all your family. Like somebody's scraping I'm usually scraping the hair off because they won't let me use the knives I shouldn't use the knives. Still to this day, I'm fully grown and I still don't get to, I'm not at the knife station yet. But that meal at the end of like a day of digging potatoes or whatever with your family, when you all eat that lunch, that's the best meal you can get. One, because you're hungry, but two, because it just came fresh out of the garden, and that's so good. My great grandmother used to have something that she would call a Leon plate. I had an Uncle Leon. I don't know. I didn't know him. I don't think I didn't know him, but an Uncle Leon at some point down the line, and he would only eat vegetables. Vegetables in the South is a loose term, but it was just a plate piled with
That includes
corn
potatoes.
and it definitely includes potatoes, includes mac and cheese sometimes if
Oh,
like there's
definitely.
things that aren't necessarily vegetables. But that, just a plate piled high with garden produce that's been seasoned with bacon grease and all the good tricks. There's
And
not
lots of
much
butter.
better than that. Lots of butter, lots of bacon grease, not much better than that. And then I guess but if I have to pick one thing, I love cornbread and milk, like cornbread, even cornbread and buttermilk. Like, I don't know if people, that could be really deeply Southern, but after a meal late at night, sometimes your grandma would like get a glass of cold milk or cold buttermilk and put the bread in it, and it's got that crispy brown part, and it's good. It's just really good. I don't know how to explain that to people who've never had it, but
Hmm.
I would recommend it.
And you eat it with a spoon, right? I mean, you just crumble up your
Eat it
cornbread
with a
and eat it
spoon.
with a spoon. Yeah.
Eat it with a spoon. Eat it with a
Do you
spoon.
do whole buttermilk or low fat buttermilk?
I mean, if I'm choosing, I'm probably not going to do buttermilk. But if that's what is given to me by a grandma or somebody, then let's do it. I'll never turn it down. I'm down for whatever they've got. But I would probably just use regular milk if I had the choice.
Yes, same for me. But I have heard of people doing buttermilk, and I don't know what the
Oh yeah,
Southerners use, but probably the old school would be the full fat, the whole buttermilk, because that's
they
what they,
and
if they were making their own,
they
that's
do
what
for
they would have
sure.
used.
They do some wild stuff that I've heard of and seen people even like slicing up a raw onion and putting it in there and eating that with it. And I've never done that. And I've heard of people adding
Oh,
black
wow.
pepper to it. Never done that. I know. But my great grandma, she had beautiful skin all the way until she died. And she would take the buttermilk, like any of it spilled, and pat it on her face. And I've thought about that since then because she just had the best skin. And I wonder if there was a secret to that. So buttermilk, you're going to deal with buttermilk in the South. And I did not mean to make all y'all talk about buttermilk so much, but it's here. And
It's
from
here.
skincare to food, there will be
Just
buttermilk.
pat it on your face occasionally, and you'll keep that young skin.
You'll be beautiful.
That's a pretty great tip. So you have a wife and a
I
son. How
do.
long have you been married?
I've been married will be 13 years this year. And I've got a 10-year-old who'll be 11 this year. Caitlin is my best friend. She always has been since like second grade. We went to this they took all the gifted kids and put us in one school one day a week. And so I remember, probably doesn't remember, but I remember like seeing her on the playground and being like, that, I like her. And then from then on, I kind of just like followed her around, and she was like Miss Thing all through high school and stuff. So I had to like grow into my ears in college to be eligible. But when I finally was, I like moved right in on that. And now we've been married for this long, and we have the best time. And she helps me with what I'm doing. She actually like told me to do this. She's got the broadcaster. She's got a background in media. I don't have any background in this. She has a degree in broadcast journalism. She also was a specialist in education. So she kind of knows how and I have really severe ADHD. So she kind of knows how to schedule me and set it up to be successful, So it's just the best situation. She's out in the yard now with Charlie doing stuff in the garden. We've got some gladiolas that are doing well right now, and it's really fun and exciting. So we have the best time.
Well, it's so fun that your family helps you with this. And speaking of family, whenever you are inviting family or friends over, do you have a favorite recipe or menu that you and your wife might serve?
Well, honestly, so we live with all of our families. Like, they all live here in this town, like very close to us even. So there's like so many generations going back. We haven't moved up to having people over times yet. Most of the having people over is at their houses and at their things. So we aren't usually like in charge of it.
Right.
Right. Like
They're inviting
I
you
have not yet
constantly,
got to design the menu. I still am assigned bringing of things so far, but I make a really good poppy seed shack.
which is very common in the
Oh
South.
yeah.
Yes,
You
it's
have to
very
work your
common to
way.
have everybody bring a dish.
You got to work your way up. We even had we don't do it anymore. COVID kind of messed it up, but we had a running document that was like, we would rotate between people's houses every Sunday, and then that would shift the rotation. Whoever's house it was at was in charge of the sweet tea. But then there was a meat rotation, and there are like 3 vegetables and a side, and everybody rotated through the things. So you all brought a different one every time, It was really intense. It's like a very intense schedule of things. So I'm
It's
still,
organized.
right, just very organized. Everybody's teachers in my family. They're all teachers. So they can't help it. But so that's kind of where I stay so far as doing that. And then I got spoiled by our best friend is a chef, and he grew up here, so he knows good food there. And then he got trained in Napa Valley at the Culinary Institute. So anytime I've had a ordeal at my house, I make him do it. So it's like I kind of have just tiptoed around being in charge of the menus and meals. I like everybody else is just so good at it. I let them take the lead and kind of just do what I can. I wash the dishes and I'll bring the plates. That's my territory.
That is a very important role as well. I'm okay with
I
that.
think it's the best one. There's the least amount of pressure.
Yes, absolutely. There's always lots of dishes after a big get together.
There is.
What role has food played in establishing the South as a place for hospitable family gatherings and community events?
Well, I think that food is the common language of the South. It's like the common language that we do have. And I hate to keep bringing up like money type stuff, but the South that I am familiar with is there's levels of wealth, and most of it is not as wealthy as other places historically. And what that means is what we have to offer here in Mississippi, and what I think is beautiful about it is culture. We have food to offer. We have art, like folk art to offer, and nature. Like, those are the things. So instead of it being like a place you could come to, I mean, there are things you can do here for sure, definitely. But if you were going to come here, what we would focus on are those things. So food is kind of available to most people in a way, and then you can get real good at food even with not a large budget. So I think it's kind of like in the same way you'll see a lot of folk art if you come to Mississippi or to this area of the South. Like, people's mailboxes will be decorated as like crazy things, or like there'll be like a wall of license plates on the barn, little stuff like that. That's art, and that's people like expressing themselves. And I think food is a version of that. Food is a version of like an artistic expression, and it's one that doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's been historically very important in us expressing, like we were talking about earlier, expressing our love for people and wanting to show people that they're special. I might not can take you to like a beautiful beach right here in Laurel, Mississippi, but I can make a beautiful meal out of hardly nothing. And that's what you'll do. So it's kind of like the backbone of most events and the backbone of hospitality here. It's food is so important in that manner. It's the most important thing. And it also is the time of day when people spend together. Like you go off to work, you go out to work in the garden, you're going to school, whatever it is, you come together at that meal, whether it's nightly in your own home or on Sundays after church at Sunday lunch. Like that's where community happens. So it's the catalyst of all of it. It's kind of the thing that makes all of it happen.
Yes, I definitely agree. Are there any favorite rituals or traditions that you have or that you continue to carry forward that have to do with food? I know you mentioned lots of large family gatherings and still being able to get together with family and bring a dish, but do you have any other traditions in your family that you would point to and say, "Oh, I love this. I love doing this and I want to keep going forward with this and teach, and bring my son into this?"
I love that. That's the question, because that's kind of a question that all of us that are our age and younger are going to have to decide is like, what do we want to take forward into this? Our grandparents are getting older, our parents are getting older, and it's kind of our turn to decide what happens next. Like, what are we going to continue with these traditions? Are we going to not continue with these traditions? And it's ironic to ask that right now, because I'm kind of in a period of life where I think my generation is kind of realizing that we do have to make those decisions soon to decide like what we're going to continue doing. So I'm kind of in a period of reflection of like, what is it that we want to take forward and what can I do to help that be taken forward? We've relied on the older generations to do that for so long. It's been so understood that I wouldn't even know how to start doing Sunday dinners, like it's kind of that moment, and we're kind of at that moment in life. So that's something I'm thinking about a lot right now. I really loved our Sunday lunches. I really did. We would go to my dad's family one Sunday and my mom's family the other Sunday. And COVID kind of shut that down, and then people got older. So that's not as often now. It's more reserved for holidays. And people are busy and life is different. So it's kind of a moment of reflection of like, what do we want to save? What do we want to take to the future? Like now that my grandpa doesn't really do the garden as much, who are we going to do the garden? And I'm very grateful to my older cousin. She has done the garden this year, and I've still got uncles and everybody's still doing the stuff. It's just kind of, I feel like the next few years are us deciding deciding the answer to that question. That is a very relevant question. I think it's a very relevant question for a lot of people and not just me. I feel like that's kind of our generation's, I didn't even know we had to make that choice, but here we are. I think it's our time to decide what are we going to do? What are we taking forward? And I know I want to I mostly want to capture the love that I've always felt and take that forward the most, whatever that means for my child. But I do think about it a lot when I'm making these videos. I'm like, wow, Charlie doesn't know about this, or Charlie's never picked a cane pole and got a catawba worm off a catawba tree and hooked it and dealt with all that green slime and like caught a fish and, those kinds of things. And some of it was stuff I didn't want to be doing. So it's a very good question. It's a very good question. And I'm interested in seeing what happens next. But I think we're in a moment of awareness of like, okay, so we need to think about what's next.
Right. Well, part of the reason I started this podcast, Come Over for Dinner, is to talk about hospitality, and not necessarily Southern hospitality, but that is my background. And part of it was exactly what you said. One of the things that I want to demonstrate in my life and have my kids demonstrate in their lives is love for others and have an open, welcoming home, and then just practical ways to do that. So a lot of what the guests talk about are just really practical ways to do it and different ideas, because different things work for different people.
Definitely.
As you mentioned, your family might have a list and assign you a dish, or somebody else may say, don't bring anything, I've got it all. Or somebody else may just say, bring whatever, it's a potluck. And so there's just different ways of doing it. And I think in the end, the goal is to pass on the idea of getting together, creating community, having fellowship with each other, and not losing that, not becoming isolated, not becoming the people who just shuffle home from church on Sunday and then never have a Sunday lunch, or a family dinner
Exactly.
or something like that.
And it's so easy not to. Like, it's the easiest thing not to,
Mhm.
so much so that you don't even realize that it's happened. And then you look up and you're like, wait, we haven't had Sunday dinner in so long. So I feel like it's almost like a real concern. It's something I wake up and think about. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I doing enough? Like, what can I do more? And it's the whole thing, because it's just so valuable.
Yes. All the things you mentioned, whether it's surrounding food, a meal, or teaching your son to fish or, whatever, it all requires thoughtfulness, but also hard work. And I think that's one of the things that people
That's
hopefully
it.
understand, that, when we talk about all these fun traditions and getting together and all of that, it really does involve a lot of hard work, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it.
So much, and even the hard work part of it makes it even better. And my family right now, if they're listening to this, they are all rolling their eyes so much at me, because I have griped and complained at every time they made me wake up to go to the garden early in the morning, and every time I was like digging potatoes and just like, what am I doing here? How does this happen to me? Why why am I here? And now I'm looking back like, should we be doing that still? Like, wait, who's going to do the potatoes this year? So it's a
Right.
thing. It really is a thing that you have to be conscious about, because there is a lot of hard work that goes into it. Even just meals, that those the ladies that I grew up around, they were like magic. Make my great grandma could just like make it would be like a 7-course meal, just like a piled high with so much food, and on a whim, she just like was like, y'all come over for lunch real quick, and I can't do that. So it's a skill, and it's very magical, and I hope that we can hang on to it. I hope the book that I've written helps with a little bit of that, but we got to get those recipes down too, because the recipes are so important. But then that's another challenge we got, is the recipes are like just a little bit of this and like a little teensy bit of that and a smidge of this, and you're like, wait, none of
Uh-huh.
that,
A
none
tad.
of that's measurements, right? A tad, none of that's measurements. Yeah.
Someone said once that there was this set of measuring spoons that they had or saw, that on each one was labeled with tad, smidge, all the way down. I'm like, I need those.
Amazing.
Pretty great.
It would work here. It really would work. I know there's like at least 5 recipes written over there in my kitchen that would be the best way to figure it out. I'll never figure them out
Oh,
without that
no,
kind of a thing.
exactly. Well, it is so true that we appreciate when we look back, especially as a child. You don't recognize
Definitely.
how blessed you are when you're surrounded by food and
Definitely.
family and people that love you and are pouring into your life. And when you grow up and have that maturity and look back, you realize, wow, I was really blessed. And I want to carry that forward. And yeah, all the things you said. It's just, it's such a great thing to think through, and how do we continue that in our own families, and how do we keep that culture alive, and how do we continue in the South and across the nation, how do we continue having the reputation for Southern hospitality, or having a welcoming home if you're not in the South. How do you have that reputation of just being a welcoming, hospitable person? And it's something that takes
Yeah.
serious thought, because it requires you to do things. It requires you to work hard and make decisions about, what is my family going to do? What is this going to look like?
And I think you said it so well earlier. It's considering other people, and that takes us out of ourselves and into thinking about other people. That's like empathy, which is a whole skill. It's a whole thing. It's a real thing. I think it's so important. So whenever whoever's listening to this has the answer to this, let us know. We need to know. How do we do
We
it?
need to
Y'all tell
know.
us.
Let's discuss it.
Yes, yes. Let's discuss it. Please tell us how. We will do it.
Well, speaking of all your years in the South, are there any stories that you can share that highlight the warmth and hospitality, the generosity associated with Southernisms? I mean, it can be funny, it can be quirky. Do you have any stories that stand out from just either giving or experiencing hospitality in the South?
Well, I mean, immediately I think about like Katrina. It's not that fun. It's not like funny necessarily, but so I'm like an hour and a half from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and when Katrina hit here, with the eye of the storm came right over Laurel, and it smashed everything. Like, it ruined everything. Everything was smashed. We had even just moved into a new house that they had built, and all the trees. My dad is a prolific lawnmower. I know that's like a thing down here. People are very serious about their lawns. I
Oh,
did
yes.
not inherit that gene. The little boy across the street, not little, he's like a 16-year-old. He mows my yard, but my dad did, and so he specifically got a small yard so that he didn't have to do so much work, and then all the trees fell, so. But after Katrina, there was like not water, there was like not electricity, and it was very beautiful to see this whole town. I mean, the whole town, not just the street I live on, but the whole town came together. Like, it was, we cleared the streets. They gave me a chainsaw. They've never let me touch a chainsaw since or before. And, but everybody was out there doing their work. And, they set up shelters for people. And it was like there wasn't people coming from outside to help, like nobody was coming to Laurel to help. And it was a total disaster. And there were people that really, I mean, a lot of people died here even. So watching this little community, first of all, organize after the storm, and then decide that we were all going to take care of each other it was beautiful. And it lasted for a long time. It was like 3 to 4 weeks of kind of emergency situation, like no utilities and things like that. And everybody got through it because we had everybody together doing it. And it was kind of like okay, so this block, they got their water back. So everybody was there in their houses taking showers, or they got air conditioner back. So we're all piled up sleeping here, or they've got the back porch with the screen porch. So it was just very communal, and it was very beautiful, and it was a disaster, and it was very bad for a lot of people. But that was a moment in my life where I was like, okay, we are, even though some of y'all seem gruff and you seem like so rough, when it comes down to it, it's, y'all care about each other. Y'all care about each other so much. And our priorities were for weeks just taking care of each other. And that was really beautiful. So it's not a funny story. And I guess I'm sure I've got funnier ones that are more exciting, but that was one of the most intense time periods of my life, where we were all kind of, I never questioned, like, would we survive this? I'm like hopelessly romantic in that situation, in all situations. I like would walk right into the face of danger and like give it a hug, but so don't trust me in that. But it was very dangerous, and I just felt secure even despite all of that, and that was really a wonderful thing. And then we got the news back and saw how it had impacted everybody else, and we were like, wow, there wasn't anybody to come help. It was really a mess. So that was really surprising and shocking and enjoying. But then even back to the Walmart story, that was hilarious, but also was like everybody deciding, okay, so we've got to put these kids somewhere. What are we going to do with them? The Walmart, y'all. Let's build cubicles in the Walmart, and they'll be in one giant room together, and it'll work just fine. But
going back to the one-room schoolhouse.
it was one room for 7th through 12th grade. So just that community aspect is something that I'll always remember, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forget that as a moment in my life. And so kind of when other disasters start coming, I don't want them to come by any means. And I also am a little bit more afraid of, like, I understand mortality a little bit more now that I've had my own child, but there's a security in having experienced that with these people, just because you'll be loved and taken care of. It. Everybody, even like the crazy neighbor that everybody's annoyed with, making sure she's okay too, so that was really nice. It was good for me to see people care for each other without condition. It didn't matter who you were or what you were doing or what you've been doing or how we haven't gotten along in the past. Everybody was cared for, and that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful story. That makes me think of the time that a tornado came through in Arkansas. It was not in our town, but close by. Like you said, the community came together, and it didn't matter what church you went to. You didn't have to be Baptist, Presbyterian, or Methodist, just whoever,
Exactly.
people from all different churches, and the community went and helped at this site. And if it's a bigger disaster like the one you mentioned, we had an ice storm. I think it was in not 2020, 2000 ice storm. And, in the South, there's no such thing as snow and ice storms. I mean, if it
We
snows,
don't know what that is.
no, there's no snow tires or equipment. I mean, if it snows, it's a couple inches and they let school out so the kids can play, and then it melts, And this was the ice storm of 2020 or 2000, ice storm of 2000. And like you said, it was it was widespread. And so it wasn't that somebody was coming to your neighborhood to check on you. Everyone was dealing with power outages and ice, and all night long it was so heavy on the trees that limbs broke off and they're cracking and
Oh, yeah.
popping. And, you wake up to a backyard full of limbs, and it was just this chaos. And in that, we had the same experience with neighbors, coming to check on us. And we had little kids, and they were asking, they're getting in their truck and they're going to figure out a way to get to the store. And what do we need? And it
Yeah.
was just amazing to see.
It really was. I mean, that's like, I wonder how many people have experiences like that, or if it's like very Southern to have emergency experiences, or, I mean, I know other people have natural disasters, but it really is a pivotal experience to have something like that happen. And yeah, please do not send ice storms and snowstorms here. We do not.
We're not ready.
I cannot do that. We'll do all the other things, but please don't send that.
Right. Well, one thing that those sorts of circumstances have taught me is be the person to do something. Sometimes you do have to receive it. If you're the one whose house is, the tree fell in on the roof, or you can't get out to go to the grocery store because you have a bunch of little kids, sometimes you do receive the hospitality. But in a lot of circumstances, instead of standing around and waiting for someone to offer it to you, be looking for circumstances and be looking for ways that you can offer that to other people. That's been one of the lessons I've learned growing up, just getting older, is how can I give? How can I be hospitable to other people? And I still have a lot to learn.
Well, and in a selfish way, it gives you so much to be able to give to other people. I never feel better than when I'm able to help someone, or when I'm able to make someone's day, or I'm able to just make somebody smile. There's not much better than that. So it's also, even like, it's not just like giving of yourself to where you're drained completely. It's refreshing in that way. It like builds your spirit.
Absolutely. Well, Landon, I've enjoyed visiting with you so much. And honestly, I have to do a quick little story about your last name as well. As soon as I read your last name, Landon Bryant, because I didn't know it when I first wanted to interview you, because it's Landon Talks, that I wanted to, make sure I have your full name. And I was like, Bryant, I know that name. My husband's name is Brian, Brian, not Bryant. But he had a Southern grandpa. And for his entire life, his grandpa called him Bryant. I'm not sure if he actually thought that was his name, or if that was just his Southern accent coming out, like he knew it was Bryant, but Brian, but he called him Bryant. And because he was a little bit of an irritable fella. And so he would, would always come out as, Bryant, you're being too loud, or Bryant, come here, I need you to do something for me.
And maybe that's where the name come from. Maybe a grandpa was yelling, and that's where we got it. But that lines up. And unfortunately, whatever his grandfather decided to call him is what it would be from then on out.
Until his grandfather died, that was his name, Bryant.
Definitely.
I will always remember your name as Landon Bryant, because my husband is not Bryant, but for years he was. So if someone came and said it, he might respond to it. Just like old habits, like,
that's
me,
so funny.
Wait, that's not really my name.
That's so funny. So we both raise our hands.
Yeah,
that's
both
hilarious.
Raise your hand like,
grandpas do that kind of stuff. They do what they want.
They do what they want, and you just go with it. Well, thank you so much for taking time to come on and tell us all of your favorite Southernisms and about Southern hospitality. I've enjoyed our discussion so much, and we will continue to discuss it.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Until next time, bye for now. You'll find recipes, favorite kitchen item recommendations, and more at comeoverfordinner.com. You can also find content from Come Over for Dinner on Patreon, a place where you can support your favorite creators. So if you're a fan of the Come Over for Dinner podcast, check out my page at patreon.com.